Hey YouTubians, it's Tony here from We Try Anything. Channel likes try anything, so you don't have to. In today's video, what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at another watch from the Casio range, with this being the Casio G-Shock 2110 ET. Now, as is customary with the watches that we review on the channel, we'll be looking around the GA-2110, highlighting some of the materials and the design of the watch featured in this video, and then mentioning some of the sizes along the way. We'll then go through some of the functions that this watch has to offer, pop it on our wrist and say we'd like to wear. Now, I have put a link to some of the instructions for this watch, which will take you off via the Casio website, and there is also a tutorial video for this watch coming soon for the Casio GA-2110. And also there is an affiliate link if you want to have a look, find out more on Amazon about these watches, plus the many other colours that I'm going to mention later that this watch has. Now, this version of the GA-2110 I managed to acquire via eBay as usual. It's quite a distinctive watch to buy. I mean, there is, as I've mentioned, there is a lot of colours for this watch, but this one, it came in, well, what would be very cheap, because this watch was quite in demand when it was released in 2020. You know, a lot of people went for this type of watch, especially because obviously it's got Casio's octagonal design, which is reminiscent of what would be the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. Now, this is what gives this the nickname of Casioak, which obviously, as you can see, it does have some inspiration from this watch, but it also has inspiration from the other G-Shocks like the 5600 series and the like, really. Now, as I say, normally when I buy these off eBay, I buy them because it just shows a little bit how these watches wear, and in this instance this watch is worn really well. There's no real marks on this watch that I can say, so you know, props to the previous owner. Also, it was a little bit cheaper. Now, I'm going to mention, I don't normally mention the prices, but I got this for £35 including delivery, obviously with it being pre-loved. But these watches, I mean, hence why I've got this particular model where the bezel is quite in contrast to the rest of the actual watch. It is available in many other colours, other styles, and in other looks, really. I mean, you can get a smaller version of this one, which is, I would imagine, is more aimed at ladies and stuff like that. But if you do find these type of watches a bit too big on your wrist, then there is that other option. So moving along, let's take a closer look at this watch. Now, it is made of a carbon fibre reinforced resin, which has a octagonal double moulded bezel. Now, this measures around 45mm in diameter, lug to lug width of, or height of 48.5, which isn't that big really considering the actual size of the watch. Now, case thickness, it is about 11.8, and like my last review, the actual watch was a little bit thicker than that, so it's not that thick, even though considering it is quite a standout design for this type of watch. Now, also, this watch features a very nice resin band. It's nice. I mean, it's kind of like some of the other watches I have featured, but it does have the ribbon effect going on here. It does feature a quick release to it as well, which is really nice for this range of watches. But I mean, you are kind of looking at a bit more expensive in comparison to, say, some of the more budget friendly watches that I have featured in the past. I've measured the actual top. It's around 24-25mm going on here near the actual case, and it tapers down to around 20mm down at the bottom, right near where the actual, you've got a resin strap retainer, and also you've got a plastic buckle in this instance. Now, it's not a heavy watch by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, with that carbon fibre reinforced resin does add to the actual lightness of this watch. So it's around the 51 grams, which is a very nice measurement, or very nice weight for your wrist. In terms of the actual glass, now let's look at the glass. I mean, obviously I have cleaned it, and it does pick up little bits and pieces of obviously dust. The actual glass is a flat mineral glass, as you probably would expect from a watch that has that G-Shock moniker. And as you can see, there's no real, only just some little slight imperfections on the glass, but it does hold. Oh, is that a scratch there? No, it does hold up very well. The only thing with this glass, it is, as you can see, I'm trying to hide it from the light here. It is quite reflective, so just be aware of that fact. I mean, it doesn't affect reading the time, but it does reflect light very well. Now, on the back, I'll just turn it around slowly because I know I've got quite shaky hands when I do these reviews. As you can see, the module number is 5611 going on here, and it does feature what would be a stainless steel back with the usual 4 screws. So obviously if you're going to remove the case, then you may need to just the case back, then you're obviously going to remove the actual straps going on here, because I've tried flexing them, screws and stuff like that to get out the battery. Now, talking about the battery, it is a battery that lasts for about 3 years from new, and that's approximate, so obviously that depends on the use case scenario of this watch. And also, I don't think it's mentioned on the back, is it? Because normally they do mention it. Also, yep, there it is. Water resistance to 200 meters. Now, the battery does power an accurate quartz movement. Now, the quartz movement built into this, from what I've seen, is plus and minus 15 seconds per month, which is probably one of the more accurate watches that I have featured from Casio on this channel. Now, moving on to the actual, what you can see going on here is the design of the watch. Now, obviously you've got your 4 metal pushers going on here, and they don't stick out. I mean, I know I've seen a few Casio or a few G-Shock watches where this is the case with the actual pushers, and it's quite a new thing to me, because this is my first G-Shock I've ever owned, and I've got to say, what a G-Shock to own. It is really nice. It doesn't detract away from the actual shape of the watch, and obviously the octagonal bezel going on here, it's striking. I mean, I think I picked a very nice watch to feature on this channel. I mean, there are other ones. You can get the stealth, like grey, like very dark grey, or like a light black, and you can get many other colours like a very striking red, but I think this one just really stands out from the crowd in terms of the way it looks, and it is a really, really nice watch to look at. Now, obviously you can see on the dial, if I just zoom in a little, you can see obviously you do have a negative digital display going on here. Now, the only thing with that negative digital display, I sometimes do find that the negative displays can be quite hard to read on a digital watch. Now, it obviously depends on the font they've used and the layout of the watch, but in this instance, I've got to say, yeah, it's not the easiest watch to glean what would be any sort of information off. But in saying that, I do think that it doesn't detract from the design, because if they use what would be a positive display where all the characters are black and the background's like a grey, as it were, that you would get on digital watches, then I think it would detract away from the actual design of watch. So I do understand what would be the decision to make that the case, but if you are looking to use some of the features, then people who may be having slight deteriorating sight may find it a little bit harder to use than other people. But again, for me, a lot of the features that I'm going to talk about with this watch are lost on me. It's just the pure look, and I've got to say, like with the actual hands going on here, that I really do like the look of this watch, and I especially love the contrast between the bezel and what would be the actual dial and the rest of the watch going on here. Now, if you look at the hour markers, again, they don't really stand out. I mean, obviously you've got the areas at the top within the actual chapter ring going on here, which I believe is what it's called. Easy to read, well, easy to understand, but I'm going to show you what it's like in darkness. Now, it does have an LED backlight, which you can see I'm pressing here. Now, there's your single, what I would believe, an LED light. Now, I do like the way it does graduate to nothing really, like it just peters out. I mean, I haven't seen that on any other Casios because they're normally on or off, but it does dim very nicely. The lume on these hands is only on the hands, which is a massive shame. I think it should be on the actual hour markers as well, but in this instance, it's only on the hands, so you will get a rough idea of the time, and it does last a little while. I mean, I haven't set this watch up somewhere just to give me an idea how long the lume lasts, but I have used this watch in the past couple of days, and yeah, I can see in like darkness or semi-darkness the actual handset illuminate as well. But the colouring on the handset, obviously, it does kind of match the bezel going on here, and also you do have the date, which is the actual day of the week, which this watch will indicate, and you can change that if you want through the adjust button. You can choose whatever day you are on, so it's not automatic as such, or if it is, then you can adjust it just in case it is incorrect. Now, the other thing I will mention about that little display going on here, these hands can cover them at certain times of the day, which may be a little bit off-putting, but you can press a combination of buttons, which I'll show you in my tutorial how to do, which will move the actual handset out the way of the digital dial. So it's ideal if you're setting the time and stuff like that. Will move out the way just in case you are using the actual digital display, which is a nice little feature from Casio. Now, as I say, the actual design, I really like this watch. I can understand why a lot of watch collectors were in 2020 clamoring for this watch, and especially just people who are after a nice looking G-Shock. That, I mean, there is some real gaudy G-Shocks out there, which a lot of people do like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love G-Shock, and as with this one being my first one, I've always wanted one. But there's some that I just find, I just think, how are you going to be able to read the time? Now, in this instance, it is super easy. The dial is not overly complicated, even though this watch does have a lot of features. But it is, I've got to say, it's so easy to read and probably easy to live with as well. This watch also features a 12 and 24 hour format on the actual digital display. It does have a full calendar, which will work up to 2099, taking into account any like leap years and obviously the included of an extra day in February and stuff like that. It also features a mute button option as well, and as well as that, you do get daylight saving time, which will be featured on the actual display and will adjust within the hands as well. Now, the one other thing to say, I mean, I have featured it on another watch on the channel, which was a tough solar like analog digital watch. If you do adjust the time, it will adjust the hands as well, which when you are, say for example, honouring daylight saving time and it goes towards autumn where the clocks go back, when you've got a lot of watches that have that kind of analog digital where you have to change the analog part itself, it is a massive bonus that the watch will do it for you when you amend the digital display. So that is a great plus with this watch. Now, the other features, I mean, this watch is packed with features as well as the ones I've mentioned, and I'm going to just speed through them because obviously I'm talking a lot at the minute about it because it's an exciting watch for me to have. This has world time, so it will indicate 31 time zones with 48 cities, which will take into account daylight saving time off or on as well, depending on how you want to work that. The other thing it features is a stopwatch. So for example, I'll just set it off there. As you can see, the stopwatch is going on. It measures in 100th of a second. It has a measuring capacity from what will be 0, which I've shown you here, and it will go up to 59 minutes 59 seconds and 99 hundredth of a second for the first 60 minutes, and then it goes up to 24 hours after that, really, which is an astounding amount of time to measure with this kind of little digital display going on here. And as I said, the measuring unit is 100th of a second for the first 60 minutes, and then after that it's 1 second after 60 minutes have been elapsed. And it does have a measuring time, measuring modes of elapsed time, split time, and first and second times, which I'll discuss more in my tutorial video. So I'll just stop that, and I'll just, I believe I reset it via the adjust button going on here. Now, the next thing to mention after the stopwatch is the countdown timer. Now, this countdown timer measures every second. It has a countdown range from 24 hours, and now that's set up for 10 minutes. So if I just start that, you can just get an idea of how that works. The countdown start time range is from 1 second to 24 hours, and it does 1 second increments, then 1 minute increments, and then 1 hour increments. Following that, it has 5 alarms. Now, this bad boy has 5 daily alarms, and it also has an hourly time signal as well. So if you do have a lot of daily things going on where you need certain alarms just to indicate you of certain things, then this watch will help you with it. And finally, that's it really. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop it on my wrist and say what the Casio G-Shock GA-2110 ET is like to wear. I've got to say, this watch, it is super good looking. It really is probably one of Casio's better looking G-Shocks out there. Now, as I've mentioned, there's some of the watches that Casio have created. You know, don't get me wrong, I absolutely, as you can tell from the channel, I absolutely love the Casio brand. Grown up with it, I've lived with them throughout my lifetime, as it were, so far, and I've got to say, this one really does knock it out the park in terms of looks. Now, there is some Casio G-Shocks out there which just beg belief really in the way they look. I find them hard to look at really, not in terms of the design, but in terms of reading the time off it really. And I don't think you'll have that problem on with this watch. If the hands do cover the actual digital display, you can press, there's a combination of, there's a couple of buttons you can press, which I'll mention in the instructions below. How to move them out of the way if you've got to do anything on the dial, which is a nice little touch on this watch, as I've mentioned. You've obviously got the day indicator going on here on the dial. The only thing you may find amiss, which I've mentioned earlier, it doesn't have lume on the actual hour markers, which is a massive shame. But in terms of how it looks and stuff like that, I mean, from afar you can easily glean the time from it, but it's just a look at this watch. It really does put a smile on my face every time I wear it. I know it sounds weird, but it just does. It's just such a great looking watch from the Casio range. And as I say, in terms of comfort, my wrist is 6.5 inches and it's just comfortable. It sticks to my wrist very well. The lugs aren't too big on this watch. I mean, considering it's not the smallest of watches, but it's still comfortable. Wrist, it doesn't affect my wrist in any way whatsoever. And in terms of the weight of the watch, no, it's just a nice light watch, and that's obviously down to its carbon guard really, which helps protect the module of the watch, and B, being it carbon fiber, which is reinforced resin, it just keeps this watch nice and light and easy to wear. But it's just, I'm going to say it one more time, it is the look of this watch. Now, it is in this example where you've got the actual off-white and the blue resin going on here, and obviously it's complemented by the blue dial with the off-white handset going on there and date indicator. And I just think they're onto a winner with this watch. It's just one of these watches. I mean, I don't really go on too much about, you know, the style and the look of this watch, but this watch I would wear out. I'd wear to a meeting. I would wear it because I would imagine it would be quite a conversation piece as well, you know, just a little bit of an icebreaker. And I've got to say props to Casio for doing that. And I can see why this easy to read dial and this easy to read watch had a bit of a buzz when it was released in around the 2020 mark. I mean, these watches were very hard to get hold of, but nowadays obviously people are, you know, not moving on from them, but some people don't wear them as much and can benefit from that off eBay with cheaper prices, or from retailers. I have seen them, so much this particular model, but there was a green and black one that I nearly bought, and that was around the £50 mark. So, and that was brand new as well, so not as highly sought after as there were a couple of years ago. But again, I can understand why this watch was a very popular watch to own, and I'll be honest with you, this watch will be in my collection for some time yet. So as you can glean from this review, a great watch to wear and a great watch to own. If you get the chance, add it to your collection, wear it on a daily basis, just enjoy it. It's a beautiful watch to look at. So I hope you like this review of this very classy Ultimate Beta daily watch from We Try Anything. And if you did, then give it a like, always helps the channel. If you want to see more videos from the We Try Anything channel, including what would be a tutorial video of this watch, then click on the subscription button below. And thank you for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.